You wake up to the smell of wet wool, mud, and something that might be fear. There's no duvet, just a canvas cot, a rat the size of your lunch, and the unmistakable sound of someone vomiting behind a sandbag wall. Welcome to the First World War. Hope you packed a change of socks. Forget what you learned in school. This isn't just history, it's hell with a mailing address. No heroic speeches, no dramatic soundtrack. Just you, a gas mask that smells like melted balloons, and the constant threat of trench foot, which is exactly as bad as it sounds. Before you get too cozy in your clean clothes and temperature-controlled room, do this. Hit the like button, because if these soldiers survived on stale biscuits and shared razors, you can handle one click. Subscribe if you want to keep time traveling to the grimiest, rawest corners of history. And seriously, comment below, how long do you think you would last in a trench? Because here, silence is deadlier than the bombs. And time doesn't pass, it festers. So pull on your mental gumboots, grab the nearest metaphorical gas mask, and let's crawl together through one long, grimy, soul-crushing day in the trenches of World War I. You wake up choking. Not because you're suffocating, but because the air is a thick stew of smoke, sweat, damp wool, and something you can't quite place. Maybe rusted iron. Your eyes flutter open, adjusting to the dim light filtering through wooden beams above. Your comfortable bed is gone. In its place, a rough canvas cot. A large rat scurries past your boot, disappearing into a dark corner. And then it hits you. This isn't a dream. You're in a trench, somewhere in France. And the calendar has somehow rewound to 1916. Before you can question how or why, a whistle pierces the air. Not the cheerful kind from sporting events. This one signals something more urgent. Around you, men, some barely more than boys, snap into motion. Their faces are caked with dried mud and unspoken worry. Their uniforms? Heavy, itchy, and perpetually damp. You stand frozen, absorbing the impossible. You're in the Great War, and the next 24 hours might be the most alien experience of your life. You may have learned about World War I in school. Dates, alliances, a few faded photographs. But nothing prepared you for the stench. For the sensation of damp socks turning to slush inside your boots. For the silence between artillery blasts, which is somehow more unsettling than the explosions themselves. This isn't history anymore. This is now. You're now. And it's overwhelming every one of your senses. A young soldier with kind eyes notices your confusion. He doesn't ask questions, perhaps disorientation is common here, but simply hands you a tin mug of something hot. Tea, you realize, though it tastes nothing like the tea you know. It's strong enough to stand a spoon in, the color of mahogany and bitter as disappointment. But it's hot, and in this moment, that's all that matters. The warmth spreads through your fingers, a small mercy in a merciless place. First day? The soldier asks, his accent distinctly Cockney. You nod, not trusting yourself to speak. Well, you picked a quiet one at least. No barrage today. He says this as if commenting on pleasant weather, and you realize that perspective here has shifted to something unrecognizable. He introduces himself as Thomas, though everyone calls him Biscuit, because he once traded his wristwatch for an extra ration of hardtack. The nickname makes sense in this upside-down world, where the mundane becomes precious. Come on then, Biscuit says, gesturing for you to follow. Might as well show you around our palace. The irony in his voice is gentle, almost affectionate. You follow him through the narrow passage, your shoulders brushing against walls reinforced with sandbags. The trench isn't straight, you notice immediately. It zigzags like a lightning bolt, and when you ask why, Biscuit explains it's to prevent enemy fire from traveling down the entire length. Smart, eh? Also means you never know what's around the next corner. Keeps life interesting. His casual tone doesn't match the gravity of his words, but you're beginning to understand that this disconnect is a survival mechanism. Humor here isn't just relief, it's resistance. As you walk, the ground beneath your feet squelches. It's not quite mud, but something more persistent. A mixture of earth, rainwater, and chalky clay that clings to everything it touches. Your boots, which you've just noticed are not your own but heavy leather things with hobnails in the soles, are already caked with it. That's what we call trench cake, Biscuit says. Sticks to everything and never comes off, rather like my aunt's actual cake. The path widens slightly into what Biscuit proudly calls the drawing room. It's merely a dugout with a few wooden crates arranged as seats, But the soldiers gathered there treat it with the ceremony of a London social club. One is writing a letter, using a tin plate as a desk. Another is carefully shaving, using a fragment of mirror and water from his canteen. A third is darning socks with the precision of a surgeon. Ordinary tasks made extraordinary by their surroundings. "Gentlemen," Biscuit announces with mock formality, "our newest arrival." The men look up, offering nods or half smiles. No one asks your name or where you've come from. Questions like that stopped mattering long ago. "Just in time for breakfast," says the sock darner, who introduces himself as Fletcher. He reaches into a small cloth bag and produces what looks like a stone but is apparently a biscuit. "Hardtack," he explains. "Guaranteed to break your teeth or your spirits, whichever comes first." You take the offered hardtack cautiously. It lives up to its reputation, more weapon than food. Fletcher shows you the trick. Dip it in your tea until it softens, but not so long that it dissolves completely. "Like dunking a cookie," he says, "if the cookie were made of cement." This, you discover, is your first lesson in trench cuisine. Food here isn't about pleasure or nutrition. It's fuel, pure and simple. And sometimes, it's barely that. The daily ration, Biscuit explains, typically includes hardtack biscuits, corned beef, affectionately called bully beef, tea, sugar, and something called makanoki stew, a tin of barely identifiable vegetables floating in greasy water. Sundays when they bring out the real delicacy, Fletcher says, eyebrows raised in exaggerated excitement. "Plum and apple jam. We save it. Make it last the week." He pauses, then adds with surprising sincerity, "It's the sweetness, you know. Reminds you there's something beyond all this." As if on cue, a young soldier appears with what looks like metal tins strapped to his back. "Mail's here," he announces, and the transformation in the dugout is immediate. Men who moments before seemed resigned to their hardtack now straighten with anticipation. Letters from home are more than messages, they're lifelines. You watch as weather-beaten hands open envelopes with unexpected gentleness, as if handling fragile glass. Some read aloud snippets about village gossip or family pets. "My daughter lost her first tooth," one man announces, his face alight with a joy that seems out of place here. The others respond with genuine interest, asking questions about how old she is, whether the tooth fairy visited. You're struck by the realization that these men carry two worlds with them. The brutal reality of the trench and the remembered warmth of home. The contrast should break them, but somehow it sustains them instead. Biscuit doesn't receive any mail, but he doesn't seem disappointed. "My mom can't write," he explains without embarrassment. "But my sister draws pictures sometimes. Last one was a cat chasing a mouse. Proper artist she is." The casual pride in his voice creates a lump in your throat. These small connections to normalcy, a child's tooth, a sister's drawing, are treasured here like gold. Your contemplation is interrupted by another whistle, different from the first. This one signals movement. "Stand to," Biscuit explains. Dawn and dusk, everyone mans the firing step. Most dangerous times of day. He leads you to a raised platform along the trench wall, where soldiers line up, eyes focused on the stretch of land beyond. You follow their gaze and see it for the first time. No man's land. It's not the barren wasteland you expected from history books. Spring has brought weeds and wildflowers, patches of red poppies creating an incongruous beauty. Nature, it seems, refuses to acknowledge human conflict. "Pretty, isn't it?" says a soldier beside you. "Grows so well because of all the—" He stops himself, glancing at you. "Because of the soil," he finishes. You understand what he doesn't say, and it hangs in the air between you like smoke. The stand-to passes without incident, and the day's routine begins to unfold. You learn that life in the trenches follows a rhythm as strict as any workplace, but with stakes infinitely higher. Morning brings inspection, officers checking that rifles are clean. They always must be, even if everything else is caked in mud. That feet are dry, they never are, and that spirits are high, a fiction everyone maintains. After inspection comes the morning hate, a brief exchange of artillery fire that's as much ritual as combat. It happens daily, like clockwork, as predictable as sunrise. Jerry sends his regards, we send ours back, Biscuit explains with a shrug. The casual way he describes the shelling makes your stomach tighten. But you begin to understand that in this world, the extraordinary has become ordinary. When the impossible happens every day, the mind adjusts or breaks. By mid-morning, you're assigned duties like everyone else. Yours is filling sandbags, scooping the sticky trench cake into burlap sacks that will reinforce the walls. It's back-breaking work, monotonous and endless. "We're like ants," says Fletcher, working beside you. "Always building, repairing, preparing. The trenches are alive, you see. They're always trying to collapse, and we're always fighting back." You hadn't thought of it that way, that the very environment is as much an adversary as any human enemy. The trenches require constant maintenance. Drainage ditches to be cleared, walls to be shored up, duckboards to be laid over the worst of the mud. As you work, you notice soldiers performing these tasks with the efficiency of long practice. There's dignity in their labor, a professional pride that transcends the grim setting. These men are not just surviving, they're maintaining standards. The middle of the day brings a strange lull. Some men sleep, a precious commodity caught in snatches when possible. Others write letters, play cards, or simply stare into the middle distance, their thoughts clearly elsewhere. You find yourself drawn to a group gathered around a small fire, boiling water in a battered pot. They're using a Tommy cooker, a small portable stove made from a tin can and paraffin wax. The invention of necessity. "Want a brew?" offers a soldier with a Manchester accent. You accept gratefully, watching as he performs the tea-making ritual with ceremonial precision. Tea here isn't just a drink, it's communion, comfort, and routine in liquid form. As you sip from your tin mug, you notice something odd. Music. Faint but unmistakable, drifting from somewhere down the trench line. Following the sound, you discover a soldier playing a mouth organ, the melancholy tune floating incongruously over the landscape. Others hum along or tap their feet. One whistles a harmony. This impromptu concert feels like a small miracle, a moment of beauty deliberately created in the most unlikely setting. Another form of resistance, you realize. "That's Wilkins," Biscuit tells you. "Plays every day at the same time, says music keeps him human." You watch Wilkins, eyes closed as he plays, and wonder at the courage it takes not just to endure this place, but to insist on bringing beauty into it. The afternoon brings new tasks and challenges. You're taught how to use the periscope, a clever arrangement of mirrors that allows observation without exposing oneself above the trench wall. Through it, you see the enemy line surprisingly close. "Just about 100 yards there," explains the sergeant, a weathered man with kind eyes that have seen too much. "Close enough that sometimes we can hear them talking, singing. On Christmas last year, some even met in the middle to exchange cigarettes. The idea startles you. Enemies close enough to share gifts. It contradicts everything you thought you understood about war. But then, nothing here aligns with your expectations. As dusk approaches, another stand to, identical to the mornings. The same watchfulness, the same tension. But this time something is different. A soldier appears carrying what looks like metal canisters. "Gas check," announces the sergeant. And suddenly everyone is reaching for the small pouches they carry everywhere. From them they withdraw what look like bizarre masks, like something from a nightmare or a surrealist painting. You're handed one too and shown how to put it on correctly. The rubber smells medicinal and slightly rotten. Breathing through it is difficult, the air hot and stale. But these masks, you're told, are the difference between life and severe injury. "We have about 6 seconds to get them on properly if gas is spotted," the sergeant explains matter-of-factly. "We practice twice daily, no exceptions. The drills are quick and efficient, everyone moving with practiced urgency. Once complete, the masks are carefully repacked, ready for instant use. You learn that vigilance here isn't occasional, it's constant. Watchfulness becomes as natural as breathing, a sixth sense developed through necessity. As evening falls, the trench transforms again. Lanterns are lit, but shielded carefully to prevent any light from being visible to the enemy line. In this muted glow, the faces around you take on a ghostly quality. Dinner is served, more bully beef, more hardtack, but tonight there's a treat. A tin of condensed milk to share among 10 men. It's passed around with the solemnity of a communion cup, each man taking exactly 1 spoonful, no more. "Best eaten off the spoon, slowly," advises Fletcher. "Make it last." You follow his example, letting the sweet richness dissolve on your tongue. After a day of bland rations, the sensation is almost overwhelming. Small pleasures here are magnified beyond recognition. After the meal comes what the men call the social hour. Cards appear from pockets, handmade chess sets from packs. Two soldiers work on a crossword puzzle torn from an old newspaper. Another reads aloud from a dog-eared novel. These moments of normalcy strike you as almost more surreal than the rest. How strange that here, in this place so removed from ordinary life, men still play games, still laugh, still create. Perhaps especially here. As the evening deepens, conversation turns to home. Men speak of sweethearts, mothers, the family dog. One describes his father's vegetable garden with such loving detail that you can almost smell the fresh-turned earth and ripening tomatoes. "My wife makes the best apple cake in Yorkshire," says a quiet man who hasn't spoken much all day. "Cinnamon and nutmeg and just a bit of lemon zest. Been married 15 years, and I still don't know the full recipe." The pride in his voice makes the others smile. Food from home is a favorite topic. Each regional specialty described with the precision of a cookbook. Each memory savored like the meals themselves. You listen, entranced by these glimpses into lives paused but not forgotten. There's something profoundly moving about men in such circumstances speaking so tenderly of normal things. Gardening, baking, fishing in village ponds. Night brings another change to the trench ecosystem. Some men prepare for sentry duty, checking equipment with practiced hands. Others make ready for sleep, arranging blankets on wooden platforms designed to keep them above the worst of the mud. Sleep here is never total, never truly restful. It comes in fragments interrupted by sounds both routine and alarming. But even this broken rest is precious, another resource to be managed carefully. You're assigned a place to sleep, a dugout carved into the trench wall with wooden supports and a waterproof sheet for a roof. It's surprisingly cozy, almost womb-like, though the earthy smell and occasional scurrying of unseen creatures remind you where you are. Biscuit shows you how to arrange your greatcoat as both mattress and blanket, how to position your helmet to keep rats away from your face. These small techniques for comfort have been refined through months of necessity. "Not the Ritz," he says with his characteristic understatement, "but you'll get used to it faster than you'd think." There's truth in his words. Humans adapt with remarkable speed, even to the most unlikely circumstances. As you settle into your makeshift bed, you notice something you hadn't seen before. Pinned to the earthen wall of the dugout are photographs, letters, small drawings, each soldier's personal shrine to the world beyond. The man next to you has a child's crayon picture showing a stick figure labeled Daddy, standing beside a house with an improbably large chimney. It's affixed to the wall with remarkable care, protected from the damp by a scrap of oilcloth. "My boy," he says simply, seeing you notice. He's 4. Nothing more needs to be said. In that moment, the distance between this muddy hole in France and a small house somewhere in England seems both infinite and non-existent. Sleep comes eventually, fitful but necessary. Your dreams are a strange mixture of your real life, the one you've somehow left behind, and this new reality. The two worlds blend and separate, blend again. You wake before dawn to the sound of voices, quiet but urgent. Something is happening. Men move with purpose through the trench, checking equipment, speaking in low tones. Biscuit appears at your dugout entrance. "Orders came through," he says. "We're being relieved. Moving back to reserve trenches for a week." The news ripples through with a palpable release of tension. A week away from the front line is like a holiday, a breath of almost normal life. The relief process is methodical. The incoming unit must be briefed on every detail of the trench. Weak spots in the walls, flooding areas, the safest paths for messengers. Maps are exchanged, along with information too sensitive to be written down. You watch as sergeants from both units walk the length of the trench, heads bent in serious conversation. This handover is not casual. Lives depend on its thoroughness. The responsibility weighs visibly on the men's shoulders. By mid-morning, you're marching away from the front, part of a column moving toward what they call the rear. With each step, you feel the atmosphere shift. Men who were vigilant now joke more freely. Shoulders straighten, voices rise. The landscape changes too. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the scarred earth gives way to fields where farmers still tend crops, where trees still bear leaves. It's like watching color bleed back into a black and white photograph. "Look, chickens!" someone calls out, pointing to a farmyard where hens peck indifferently at the ground. The sight of something so ordinary, so untouched by the conflict, brings unexpected emotion. These birds don't know there's a war on. There's comfort in that thought. Your destination is a village some miles behind the lines. It's not untouched by war, few places are, but it's intact enough that you can see what it must have been like in peacetime. Stone houses, a small church, gardens still tended despite everything. The unit is billeted in various buildings, some in the village hall, others in barns or private homes whose owners have either fled or adjusted to the constant flow of soldiers through their lives. You're assigned to a hayloft above a stable, shared with Biscuit and 4 others. 5-star accommodation, Biscuit declares, dropping his pack on the wooden floor. Real roof, real walls, and the neighbors are horses instead of rats. Practically a holiday resort. His cheerful perspective is infectious. The simple loft does feel luxurious after the trench. The week in reserve brings new routines. Different from the front but still structured by military necessity. There are drills and training exercises, equipment to clean and repair, new techniques to learn. But there are also moments of surprising normalcy. Your first proper bath in what feels like ages comes in a makeshift bathhouse set up in a brewery. Large metal tubs filled with water that's not quite hot but nowhere near cold. A simple pleasure that feels like extravagant luxury. The village women have established a laundry service, washing uniforms for a small fee. Seeing your clothes actually clean, feeling the rough fabric without its layer of mud, is disorienting in the best possible way. Food improves dramatically. The army rations are supplemented by what can be purchased locally. Fresh bread, eggs, sometimes even meat that hasn't come from a tin. Soldiers pool their money to buy ingredients, creating improvised feasts. One evening, Fletcher manages to trade his pocket knife for a chicken, which he and 3 others roast over a fire behind the stable. The smell draws a crowd, and somehow the meal stretches to feed 12. It's not the quantity that matters, but the freshness, the change, the act of sharing. There's even entertainment. A chaplain organizes a concert in the village church where men with surprising talents perform for their comrades. A lance corporal turns out to have a tenor voice that would shame professional singers. A shy private plays Bach on the church's wheezy organ. You sit in a pew that's hosted generations of worshipers, listening to music that transcends the circumstances of its performance. Around you, faces that were tense and guarded at the front now show open emotion. Laughter, tears, simple appreciation. It's during this concert that you notice something about these men that had escaped you before. Despite everything they've seen and experienced, they've retained an essential capacity for joy, for beauty. They've protected something vital inside themselves. The village brings other opportunities too. A chance to write letters home at a proper table instead of balanced on a knee in a dugout. A small shop selling postcards, tobacco, bootlaces, and other small necessities. Even a cafe of sorts, serving weak coffee and strong opinions. It's at this cafe that you experience one of the week's most memorable moments. An elderly Frenchwoman, her face mapped with wrinkles, approaches your table where you sit with Biscuit and Fletcher. Without a word, she places a plate of cookies before you. Pour vous, she says simply. For you. The cookies are clearly made with precious ingredients saved and rationed. Real butter, a little sugar, perhaps an egg. A luxury in wartime. Her gift leaves the 3 of you momentarily speechless. Fletcher, recovering first, offers her money, which she waves away with dignity. Non. Merci pour notre liberté. Thank you for our freedom. She pats his hand once, then returns to her work behind the counter, leaving the cookies and a lump in your throat. Well, says Biscuit eventually, his voice unusually soft. Can't let the lady down, can we? He takes a cookie, bites into it with exaggerated reverence, then closes his eyes. Tastes like before, he says simply. You understand he doesn't mean before breakfast. These encounters with civilians, the laundry women, the cafe owner, farmers selling eggs, remind you that the war exists alongside ordinary life. People adapt, find new patterns, continue. There's something both heartbreaking and hopeful in their resilience. The week passes too quickly. On the final evening, many soldiers visit the village's small church regardless of their personal faith. Some pray, some simply sit in the quiet space. Some light candles. The ritual offers comfort, regardless of belief. You find yourself sitting beside a young soldier who's been mostly silent during your time in reserve. He stares at the simple wooden cross on the altar, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he speaks without looking at you. My brother's birthday today, he'd be 19. The present tense hangs between you, neither confirming nor denying the unspoken. You simply nod, offering presents without words. Sometimes that's all that's possible. Morning brings the order to return to the front. The mood shifts palpably. Faces grow more serious, jokes more pointed. Equipment is checked with renewed attention. Letters are written, or finished, or rewritten, just in case. The march back is quieter than the march away had been. Men conserve energy, both physical and emotional. They know what awaits them. The knowledge doesn't bring fear, exactly, but a focused readiness that's almost tangible. As you near the front, the landscape reverts to its scarred state. Trees become broken trunks. Fields become cratered wastes. The sound of distant artillery grows from occasional rumble to constant presence. You're going back. But you're different now. A week ago, you were thrown into this world without preparation, disoriented and overwhelmed. Now you understand its rhythms, its unspoken rules. You're not comfortable. No one is. But you're no longer lost. The trench you return to isn't the same one you left. You're assigned to a different section of the line, with different challenges and characteristics. The basics remain constant. The mud, the watchfulness, the proximity of danger, but the details vary. This trench is older, more established. Its walls are reinforced with corrugated iron as well as sandbags. There are more dugouts, deeper and better constructed. Someone has even managed to install a crude drainage system that keeps the worst of the flooding at bay. "Welcome to the Savoy," jokes a corporal, showing you to your assigned section. "Mind the rats. They've been here longer than us and think they own the place." The humor is familiar now, a language you've learned to speak and understand. You settle into the routine with surprising ease. Stand to at dawn and dusk. Ration distribution, sentry duty, maintenance work. The endless, necessary tasks that keep the trench functioning and its occupants alive. The days blend into each other. What changes is your perception. What once seemed alien now makes its own kind of sense. You understand why men spend hours carefully cleaning their rifles when their own bodies are caked with mud. Why they save the smallest luxuries, a square of chocolate, a pair of dry socks, for moments when they're most needed. You learn the small technologies of trench life. How to waterproof matches by dipping them in candle wax. How to fashion a stove from discarded food tins. How to predict weather changes from the way sound travels across no man's land. More importantly, you learn the unwritten social code. Never take the last of anything without offering to share. Don't wake a sleeping man unless absolutely necessary. Carry a wounded comrade's personal items with as much care as the man himself. One foggy morning, you're assigned to a wiring party. A group that ventures into no man's land under cover of darkness or poor visibility to repair barbed wire defenses. It's dangerous work, requiring stealth and steady hands. The sergeant in charge gives instructions in a whisper. Move slowly, no sudden movements. If you hear anything, freeze. Don't run. Running makes noise and noise makes targets. His calm professionalism settles the nerves you hadn't realized were jangling. Out in the churned earth between the lines, the world narrows to immediate concerns. The wire, sharp even through gloves. The ground, treacherous with hidden craters. The fog, both concealing friend and foe alike. You work methodically, following the sergeant's example. It's while securing a section of wire that you find it. A small tarnished object half buried in the mud. Carefully you extract it. A pocket watch. German, by the look of the inscription. You slip it into your pocket without comment. A private discovery. Later examining it in the relative safety of the trench, you see that it still works. The glass is cracked and the case dented, but the hands move steadily, marking time as if nothing has changed. There's something both comforting and eerie in its persistence. Inside the case is a photograph. A young woman with a serious expression, her hair arranged in the style of a few years ago. Was she a wife? A sweetheart? A sister? You'll never know. But the watch becomes a talisman of sorts, a reminder of shared humanity. Days pass, blending into weeks. You mark time by the rotation schedule, 6 days in the front line, 6 in support trenches just behind, 6 in reserve. Then the cycle begins again. It's a rhythm designed to preserve both body and mind, though it taxes both severely. You notice changes in yourself. Your hearing has sharpened. You can distinguish between different types of shells by their sound alone. Your sense of smell has both dulled to the constant stench and heightened to subtle changes that might signal danger. More profoundly, your understanding of time has altered. In the trenches, minutes can stretch like hours during moments of tension, yet weeks compress into a blur in retrospect. It's as if time itself has been warped by the strange conditions of this existence. You find yourself adopting the soldier's peculiar blend of fatalism and superstition. You keep a particular button in your left pocket for luck. You avoid certain paths through the trench that are considered unlucky. You never light 3 cigarettes with 1 match. These small rituals provide structure, a sense of control in circumstances where control is largely illusion. You understand now why men cling to them, why they matter beyond their rational explanation. One night, unable to sleep despite exhaustion, you find yourself on sentry duty with Wilkins, the mouth organ player. The darkness is complete. No moon, no stars visible through the low clouds. Just blackness and the occasional flare that throws everything into harsh relief before fading. "Can I ask you something?" Wilkins says after a long silence. You nod, then realizing he can't see you, murmur assent. "What's the first thing you'll do? When it's over, I mean. When we go home." The question catches you off guard. Men here rarely speak of after in concrete terms. It's considered either naive or tempting fate. But in the darkness, such rules loosen. "Take a bath," you say finally. "A real one. Hot water up to my chin and soap that smells like something other than carbolic." The image is so vivid you can almost feel the warmth, smell the lavender or rose. Wilkins chuckles softly. "Good answer. Me, I'm going to sit in my mother's kitchen and eat a whole apple pie. Not share it with anyone, just me and the pie and silence." The longing in his voice makes the simple dream seem profound. It strikes you then that these men don't aspire to grand adventures after their ordeal. They don't speak of world travel or daring exploits. They dream of ordinary pleasures, home-cooked meals, clean clothes, familiar rooms. The very things that seemed unremarkable before now shine like distant stars. The conversation with Wilkins stays with you. Over the next days, you find yourself asking others the same question. The answers are revealing in their simplicity. Reading the newspaper in a comfortable chair, walking in woods that haven't been shelled, sleeping in a real bed with clean sheets. Fletcher wants to go fishing in the stream where he caught his first trout as a boy. Biscuit dreams of taking his sister to a music hall show, buying her ice cream in a proper glass dish. Another soldier simply wants to plant potatoes in his garden, watch them grow from nothing. These modest hopes become a kind of poetry, shared in quiet moments. They're not just dreams of future pleasure, you realize, but lifelines to the past, to the men these soldiers were before, to the lives temporarily suspended. Summer arrives, changing conditions in unexpected ways. The mud dries and hardens, making movement easier but raising choking dust. The heat brings new discomforts, thirst, insects, the intensified stench of latrines and unwashed bodies. But it also brings unexpected beauty. Wildflowers appear in unlikely places. Poppies, cornflowers, Queen Anne's lace growing from shell craters and along communication trenches. Birds return, their songs a surreal counterpoint to the sounds of war. One particularly hot afternoon, you're part of a water detail, tasked with refilling canteens at a spring behind the lines. It's hard work, carrying the heavy containers back along communication trenches that offer little shade. At the spring itself, though, there's a moment of unexpected peace. The water bubbles up clear and cold from the earth, seemingly untouched by the chaos around it. Ancient trees provide shade. For a few minutes as you fill the containers, the war seems distant. A French farmer appears leading a thin cow to drink. He nods to your group, weary soldiers with canteens and water cans, as if encountering military details at his spring is perfectly normal. Perhaps, after years of war, it is. You watch as he speaks softly to the cow, stroking her bony flank as she drinks. The gentleness of the interaction, the simple care for another living creature, brings a lump to your throat. In the midst of industrial warfare, this small pastoral scene feels almost holy. Back at the front, the water you've collected becomes precious cargo. It's distributed carefully, prioritized for drinking over washing. In summer heat, dehydration is a constant threat, compromising judgment and reflexes when they're most needed. You learn to conserve water with techniques that would have seemed impossible in your normal life. Washing is done with a damp cloth, using just cups rather than gallons. Shaving water is reused for washing socks. Nothing is wasted. The summer brings changes to the daily menu as well. Occasionally, fresh vegetables appear, carrots or potatoes from nearby farms, supplementing the tinned rations. Once, memorably, there are cherries, passed hand to hand like rubies. You watch as men who can endure hardship without complaint close their eyes in bliss over a single fresh cherry. The intensity of their appreciation makes you reconsider your own relationship with food, how much you took for granted, how little you truly savored. As if reading your thoughts, Fletcher remarks, "Never really tasted anything before coming here, did I? Just ate it." He's holding a chunk of bread spread with the weekly ration of jam, regarding it with the attention a gourmet might give a fine wine. "Think we'll remember," he continues. "After, I mean. Think we'll still taste everything this way?" The question hangs in the air, unanswerable. Will any of you retain this heightened awareness, this gratitude for small pleasures? Or will it fade with the return to normal life? The question of after arises more frequently as summer progresses. Not in grand discussions of post-war politics or social change, but in small, personal wonderings. Will civilian clothes feel strange after uniforms? Will the silence of peace be as unsettling as the noise of war? Underneath these questions, you sense a deeper uncertainty. Who will we be, these men silently ask, when we're no longer defined by this experience, when we return to lives that continued without us, to people who cannot truly understand what we've seen? The anxiety is particularly acute in the youngest soldiers, those who came straight from school to the trenches. They've become men in circumstances so removed from normal life that the transition back seems almost impossible to imagine. "Never had a job before this," confides a young soldier named Miller one evening. "Never courted a girl properly. Never even ordered a pint in a pub without feeling like I was pretending to be grown." He pokes at the small fire heating his tea. "How do I go back and start all that now?" No one offers platitudes or easy answers. The question is too honest, the uncertainty too universal. Instead, an older soldier simply passes him a cigarette, a gesture that acknowledges the weight of the question while offering small, present comfort. Autumn arrives with new challenges. Rain returns, and with it the mud. Temperatures drop, especially at night, making sleep more difficult. The walls of the trench, baked hard by summer heat, now begin to crumble again with moisture. "Here we go again," sighs Biscuit as the first real downpour hits. Welcome back to Chateau Mud. Within hours, the carefully maintained trench floor is a quagmire. Duckboards float, dugout roofs leak, feet are perpetually wet despite all precautions. The struggle against water becomes all-consuming. Trenches must be bailed like sinking boats. Precious possessions, letters, photographs, books, must be protected from the damp. Sleep becomes a negotiation with puddles and drips. You learn to appreciate small victories against the elements. A dugout corner that stays relatively dry. A brazier that continues to burn despite the dampness. A pair of socks dried by body heat overnight. In such conditions, these modest achievements feel significant. More than ever, you understand that the true enemy here is not just the opposing army, but entropy itself, the constant tendency of all things to fall apart, to sink into mud, to surrender to chaos. The battle against this force requires relentless effort. It's during this rainy period that an unexpected package arrives for Fletcher, a birthday parcel from his sister. The excitement spreads beyond Fletcher himself. Any break in routine, any connection to the outside world, becomes a shared event. With ceremonial care, Fletcher opens the carefully wrapped box. Inside are treasures: woolen socks, a fruitcake preserved in brandy, a small bottle of decent whiskey, a hand-knitted scarf, and a letter decorated with drawings by his niece. "It's my birthday, apparently," he announces with genuine surprise. Completely lost track. This too is common. The disorientation of time, the blurring of dates that once structured civilian life. Here, time is measured differently, by rotations, by rations, by the changing light. Fletcher, generous as always, shares his bounty. The cake is divided with surgical precision. The whiskey makes a round, each man taking a single, appreciative sip. The letter is read aloud, including the child's postscript. "Uncle Tom, please come home for Christmas. I'm saving a cracker for you." The simple plea creates a moment of silence. Christmas is still months away, but its mention conjures images of warmth and light in stark contrast to the current conditions. The possibility of home, however distant, both comforts and aches. That night, huddled in your dugout as rain drums on the corrugated iron above, you find yourself thinking about time, how it stretches and compresses in this place, how the future simultaneously shrinks to the next hour and expands to an unimaginable after. Your reflections are interrupted by a commotion outside, voices raised in excitement rather than alarm. Curiosity draws you out into the rain, where a small crowd has gathered around a sergeant holding a sodden newspaper. "It's official," he's saying, his voice cutting through the downpour. "They've got a new invention. Tanks, they're calling them. Like land ships, made of steel. Going to change everything, they say." The news ripples through the gathered men, sparking animated discussion. Some are skeptical. They've heard promises of war-ending innovations before. Others are cautiously hopeful, envisioning these metal monsters breaking the stalemate that has held for so long. Everyone has an opinion, a theory, a question. In this moment, you're struck by the intelligence and insight of these ordinary men, factory workers, clerks, farmers, as they analyze the tactical implications of a technology they've never seen. Their experience has made them strategists, whether they recognize it or not. The rain continues for days, turning trenches into canals and dugouts into damp caves. Everything is wet. Clothes, food, equipment, skin. Trench foot becomes a real concern, with daily foot inspections and the distribution of whale oil for prevention. You learn to sleep sitting up when necessary, to eat standing in ankle-deep water, to perform every task while cold and damp. The discomfort becomes so constant that occasional moments of relative dryness feel like luxurious relief. It's during this miserable period that you witness something unexpected. Music. Not the mouth organ this time, but singing. It begins with one voice from a distant dugout, then another joins, and another, until a ragged choir spreads along the trench. The song is "Keep the Home Fires Burning," its lyrics about absence and return particularly poignant in this sodden, mud-bound place. Men who rarely show emotion sing without embarrassment, their voices creating something beautiful in the most unlikely setting. When the impromptu concert ends, the silence feels different, not empty but filled with something unspoken yet shared. This, you realize, is what sustains these men. Not just duty or discipline, but moments of connection that affirm their humanity despite everything. The rain eventually subsides, leaving a transformed landscape. The ground is softer, more treacherous. Mist rises from the earth on cold mornings, creating an otherworldly scene. Visibility changes hour by hour, altering the rhythm of trench life accordingly. During a particularly thick fog, you're assigned to a listening post, an advanced position beyond the main trench line where soldiers strain to detect enemy movement. It's nerve-wracking work, requiring total silence and absolute concentration. Equipped with a sound detector, a curious device like a stethoscope connected to a large horn, you and a corporal named Harris edge forward through the mist. The world narrows to what you can hear rather than see. Distant voices speaking German, the clink of equipment, a cough quickly stifled. "They're as blind as we are," whispers Harris after you've gathered the needed intelligence and begun the careful return journey. "Strange to think of them doing exactly what we're doing, isn't it? Listening for us as we listen for them." The observation stays with you. This mirror image of experience, enemies performing identical actions, sharing identical discomforts. It's a perspective rarely articulated but understood by many here. The strange kinship with those designated as foes. Back in the relative safety of the trench, you deliver your report to the lieutenant. Details of apparent troop rotation, supply movement, the approximate number of men detected. The information is received with brisk appreciation and will be passed up the chain of command. There's satisfaction in completing this task well, in contributing to the collective effort. Despite the miseries and absurdities of trench life, you've come to respect the professionalism that prevails, the serious purpose underlying daily routines. As autumn deepens, preparations for winter begin in earnest. Additional wooden structures are built to raise sleeping areas further from the increasingly waterlogged ground. Braziers are repaired and improved. Every piece of clothing is assessed for warmth. Supply officers distribute extra blankets, woolen undershirts, and thicker socks. Men who have experienced previous winters share their survival techniques: how to create insulation from newspapers, how to warm hands without fire, how to detect early signs of frostbite. Worst thing is the waiting, explains an old-timer with a Scottish accent. When it's bitter cold and you're on sentry duty and can't move about to warm yourself, that's when Jack Frost gets his teeth into you. He demonstrates exercises that can be done while standing still, subtle movements to keep blood flowing without creating visible motion. The preparation for winter has a different quality than the daily routines of trench maintenance. There's an edge of gravity to it, a recognition that the coming season will test endurance in new ways. Cold can be as dangerous as any human enemy. One crisp morning, you wake to a transformed world. The first real frost has arrived overnight, coating every surface with delicate crystals. Mud has frozen solid. Breath forms clouds in the cold air. The familiar landscape of the trench is rendered new and strangely beautiful. "Pretty, isn't it?" says Fletcher, joining you at the fire. "Won't last, of course. Give it a few hours of men tramping about and we'll be back to mud. But nice while it lasts." His practical assessment doesn't diminish his evident appreciation of the scene. The frost brings temporary relief from some problems. The ground is firmer, movement easier, but creates others. Metal becomes painfully cold to touch. Water freezes in canteens. The latrine trenches develop an icy crust that no one wants to be the first to break. By midday, as Fletcher predicted, the frost retreats under the impact of hundreds of hobnailed boots. The brief respite from mud ends, and the eternal struggle with the elements continues. But the memory of that crystalline morning remains, a reminder that beauty can emerge in unlikely moments. As temperatures continue to drop, the challenge of staying warm becomes central to existence. Men huddle around braziers, share body heat in cramped dugouts, and develop elaborate systems for rotating positions to ensure everyone gets time near the fire. "The trick," advises a corporal who survived 2 winters at the front, "is layers. Not one thick coat, but lots of thin ones. Newspaper between layers if you can get it. Traps the warm air, see?" His practical knowledge, gained through experience rather than education, is as valuable as any officer's strategic insight. You learn other winter survival techniques: how to wrap feet in paper before putting on boots, how to melt snow efficiently for washing water, how to predict weather changes from subtle shifts in cloud patterns or animal behavior. More importantly, you learn the winter etiquette of the trenches, the unspoken rules about sharing warmth, about how long one can reasonably stay by the fire, about the obligation to bring fuel if you want heat. These social codes are as essential to survival as the practical skills. Cold changes men's priorities. Arguments that might have erupted over food or duty assignments are now more likely to center on firewood or sheltered positions. The collective focus narrows to the immediate necessities: warmth, dryness, food. Yet even in these harsh conditions, moments of surprising generosity emerge. A soldier with an extra pair of socks offers them to another whose feet are suffering. Men take longer shifts in exposed positions to give others more time to warm up. Small kindnesses become magnified in importance. The first snow arrives in early December, transforming the landscape once again. The initial response is almost childlike. Men catch snowflakes on tongues, shape hasty snowballs, marvel at the sudden blanket of white covering the scarred earth. But the wonder quickly gives way to practical concerns. Snow must be cleared from key areas. Pathways must be maintained. The white covering, beautiful as it is, creates new visibility risks during daytime movement. Everything becomes harder, slower, more deliberate. Yet snow brings unexpected benefits too. It muffles sound, creating pockets of eerie silence in a world usually defined by noise. It covers the worst of the mud, at least temporarily. And most welcome of all, it can be melted for relatively clean water, a precious resource. Better than rain, is the general consensus, at least until it melts. This ability to find the positive aspect of challenging conditions strikes you as one of the most remarkable characteristics of these men. Not blind optimism, but a practical determination to identify any advantage. As Christmas approaches, a subtle change comes over the trench. Despite, or perhaps because of, the harsh conditions, small efforts at festivity appear. A dugout is decorated with strips of colored paper saved from parcels. Someone fashions a small tree from wire and green fabric. Letters and packages from home increase, bringing not just practical supplies but tokens of the season. Cards with winter scenes, small gifts, special foods preserved for the occasion. These connections to normal life, to traditions temporarily suspended, are treasured beyond their material value. The army itself acknowledges the season. Extra rations are distributed, a small amount of dried fruit, a few ounces of chocolate, a carefully transported plum pudding to be shared among many. Officers arrange for concert parties, for special church services. These official recognitions of Christmas pale beside the informal celebrations created by the men themselves. Improvised instruments appear for carols. Hidden stores of treats are revealed and shared. Handmade gifts are exchanged. Carved wooden trinkets, sketches, useful items fashioned from discarded materials. You watch as Biscuit presents Fletcher with a pipe rack made from an ammunition box, decorated with intricate patterns cut into the wood. Fletcher, in turn, gives Biscuit a carefully preserved orange, somehow obtained from a village shop during the last rotation to reserve. The simple exchange, conducted with gruff affection and minimal ceremony, moves you unexpectedly. In this gesture is distilled so much of what you've come to understand about these men, their resourcefulness, their generosity, their insistence on maintaining civilized connections despite barbaric circumstances. Christmas Eve brings a surprise, a temporary unofficial truce. It begins with carol singing, German voices from their trenches answered by British ones. Then, cautiously, men begin to emerge into no man's land, meeting in the middle to exchange small gifts, cigarettes, chocolate, badges. You watch from the trench as these encounters unfold, tentative at first, then relaxing into something almost friendly. Photos are shared, broken conversations pieced together from fragments of shared language. For a few hours, the artificial enmity is suspended. "Strange, isn't it?" says a soldier beside you. "Yesterday we were enemies. Tomorrow we will be again. But today, just men far from home on Christmas." The observation captures perfectly the surreal quality of the moment, the temporary lifting of the war's logic. Not everyone participates. Some remain suspicious. Others follow officers' warnings against fraternization. But enough join in this spontaneous armistice to create a memorable image. Former foes meeting peacefully in a landscape defined by conflict. The truce ends as night falls, men returning reluctantly to their respective lines. No dramatic farewells, no promises. Just a gradual withdrawal, a resumed distance. By morning, the ordinary vigilance is restored, the brief connection already becoming memory. Christmas Day itself brings as much normalcy as the army can provide under the circumstances. A church service is held in a partially destroyed building behind the lines. A special meal is served, still from field kitchens, still eaten from tin plates, but with small additions that signify the occasion. Letters are read and reread. Packages from home are opened with ceremonial care. Toasts are made with whatever is available: rum ration, saved wine, even tea. Absent family members are named and remembered. For a day the war recedes slightly, though never completely. You observe how each man honors the day in his own way. Some maintain religious observance, others focus on memories of civilian celebrations, still others treat it as simply another day requiring endurance. All approaches are respected, all experience is valid. As evening falls, bringing with it a fresh snowfall that muffles sound and softens the harsh landscape, you find yourself in a philosophical conversation with Fletcher and several others. The occasion seems to invite reflection, assessment, projection into the future. "Wonder where we'll be next Christmas," says one, voicing the thought that must occur to many. The question hangs in the air, unanswerable yet compelling. Will they be home? Still here? Somewhere else entirely? The possibilities are too numerous, too dependent on factors beyond their control. "I just hope," responds another slowly, "that we remember all this, not just the bad parts, the other things too." When asked what he means, he gestures vaguely around the dugout. "This, how we looked after each other, how we found ways to make it bearable. His words capture something essential about the experience you've shared. Beyond the mud and cold, beyond the danger and discomfort, there has been something profound in how these men have created community in the most unlikely circumstances. You've witnessed extraordinary resourcefulness, weapons turned into tools, discarded materials transformed into useful objects. You've seen remarkable resilience, humor in the face of misery, kindness despite exhaustion. You've observed a society with its own rules, codes, and values emerging from necessity. As the conversation continues, moving from past to present to cautious imaginings of the future, you realize how much you've learned in this strange displacement. Not just practical skills of survival, but deeper understandings of human capacity and connection. The days after Christmas bring a return to routine, though tinged with new awareness of time's passage. Another year approaches. Men speak of 1917 with a mixture of hope and resignation. Hope that it might bring resolution, resignation to the possibility that it might not. New Year arrives with minimal ceremony. A few handshakes at midnight, perhaps an extra tot of rum if an officer is feeling generous. The occasion is acknowledged but not celebrated. For many, it simply marks endurance, survival, the continued passage of days. January brings the war's harshest conditions. Snow turns to sleet, then freezing rain. Temperatures drop further. The ground freezes solid, making any necessary digging near impossible. Metal objects stick to bare skin. Every task becomes more difficult, requiring more energy when energy is most depleted. You learn that cold has its own vocabulary. There's the initial discomfort, the painful stinging as extremities begin to freeze, the dangerous numbness that follows. There's the bone-deep chill that seems to reach internal organs. There's the particular agony of rewarming frozen flesh. The struggle against cold becomes all-consuming, pushing other concerns to the background. Men who maintained scrupulous cleanliness now focus solely on warmth. Social conversations narrow to practical matters of survival. Even letters home speak more of weather than warfare. In these extreme conditions, the bonds between men strengthen further. Soldiers check each other for signs of frostbite, share body heat without embarrassment, take risks to bring fuel for fires. Survival becomes even more explicitly collective rather than individual. You notice, too, how the challenging conditions reveal character with particular clarity. Some men become more generous in hardship, others more selfish. Some find reserves of humor, others retreat into silence. Some lead by example, others follow with quiet dignity. What impresses you most is the general absence of complaint. These men endure conditions that would seem unbearable in civilian life, yet they do so with remarkable stoicism. Not from lack of feeling, but from a pragmatic recognition that complaint changes nothing while potentially weakening resolve. February brings no relief from winter's grip. If anything, conditions worsen. Supplies become more difficult to transport over frozen roads. Illness spreads in crowded dugouts. The cumulative effect of months of cold, damp, and poor nutrition begins to tell on even the strongest. Yet even in these bleak circumstances, the human spirit asserts itself in unexpected ways. A soldier with artistic talent creates delicate sketches of springtime scenes, sharing them to boost morale. Another organizes a chess tournament played on handmade boards. A third reads aloud from a battered copy of Dickens each evening. These small efforts to maintain civilization, to create meaning beyond mere survival, move you deeply. They represent a quiet defiance, not of the enemy across no man's land, but of the conditions that threaten to reduce men to their most basic instincts. You begin to understand that this perhaps is the most important battle being fought here, not for territory or tactical advantage, but for the preservation of humanity itself. It's a battle fought not with weapons, but with small acts of kindness, with humor, with art created from scraps. As February gives way to March, the first tentative signs of spring appear. The quality of light changes subtly. Birdsong returns to the devastated landscape. The air carries occasional hints of warmth. The frozen ground begins to thaw, gradually at first, then with increasing speed. The thaw brings mixed blessings. Movement becomes easier, cold less life-threatening. But the melting snow and ice return the ground to its familiar muddy state. Trenches flood, walls collapse. The endless work of maintenance begins again with renewed urgency. Back to Chateau Mud, sighs Biscuit, but with less resignation than before. There's a sense that the worst has passed, that survival through the winter represents a victory of sorts. Men's faces turn more frequently to the sky, noting the longer days, the changing light. You notice signs of renewal not just in the landscape but in the men themselves. Energy returns gradually. Conversations extend beyond immediate needs to include memories, plans, hopes. Letters home become more expansive, less focused on present hardships. Spring brings practical changes to trench life. Greatcoats are set aside during daylight hours. Cold rations become more palatable when not eaten with numbed fingers. Water is more plentiful, allowing slightly more frequent washing. Small comforts, but significant. More profoundly, spring brings psychological shift. The mere fact of having endured the winter creates a sense of accomplishment, of increased resilience. If that could be survived, what cannot? The thought is rarely articulated but can be seen in straightened shoulders, in more frequent smiles. April brings real warmth, transforming the trench environment once again. Mud dries. Wildflowers return to the edges of shell craters. Insects reappear, a mixed blessing. As they bring both color and irritation, the smell changes from the frozen sterility of winter to the complex organic sense of growth and decay. With spring comes increased activity. Both sides emerge from winter's relative stasis, resulting in more movement, more vigilance required. The warming earth brings its own challenges. Decomposition accelerates, producing odors previously suppressed by cold. Flies become a constant presence. Yet these challenges seem manageable after winter's extremes. There's a sense of renewed purpose, of forward momentum. Men speak more openly of eventual victory, of return, of life continuing beyond this interruption. The future expands from the contracted focus of survival to include broader possibilities. You notice how the seasonal cycle has influenced everything about trench life. Not just practical matters of comfort and logistics, but morale, outlook, the very atmosphere of daily existence. Nature's rhythms assert themselves even in this most unnatural environment. As spring advances, you reflect on your strange journey through this displaced time. From disorientation to understanding, from outsider to participant, you've experienced the full cycle of trench life through changing seasons. You've learned its languages, its codes, its unwritten rules. More importantly, you've witnessed the remarkable adaptability of the human spirit. These men, ordinary individuals from ordinary lives, have adjusted to extraordinary circumstances. They've created community where none existed, found beauty in desolation, maintained dignity in conditions that might have stripped it away. You've seen courage expressed not in dramatic gestures but in daily endurance, in small kindnesses, in humor preserved against all odds. You've observed how humanity asserts itself even when most severely tested, perhaps especially then. And now, as the trench stirs with spring's renewal, as men emerge from winter's survival mode into something approaching hope, you feel the first intimation that your time here may be coming to an end. The knowledge brings both relief and unexpected regret. Relief naturally at the prospect of returning to your own time, your own life, but regret too at leaving this community forged in adversity, these men whose quiet heroism has so moved you. You've shared something profound with them, something difficult to articulate but impossible to forget. On what you somehow know will be your final evening in the trench, you find yourself seeking out those who have meant most to you during this strange displacement. Not to say goodbye, that would require explanations impossible to provide, but to cement memories, to express unspoken appreciation. You sit with Biscuit beside a small fire as dusk falls, sharing a precious cigarette. Neither of you speaks much. After months of shared experience, words seem superfluous. His presence has been a constant, his practical wisdom and unfailing humor a guide through this alien world. Fletcher joins you, bringing a carefully preserved biscuit from a package recently arrived from home. He breaks it meticulously into 3 equal parts, performing this act of sharing with characteristic generosity. The simple gesture encompasses everything you've come to value about him. Others pass by, exchanging nods or brief words. The sergeant whose calm leadership steadied you in moments of fear. The young soldier whose artistic talent created beauty from discarded materials. The quiet man who read Dickens aloud during the darkest days of winter. Each has contributed to your understanding. Each has demonstrated some aspect of resilience or kindness that you hope to carry forward. These ordinary men, thrown into extraordinary circumstances, have revealed the profound capacity of humans to adapt, to connect, to preserve what matters most. As night deepens, conversation around you turns to the future. Not the immediate tactical future, but the longer view. What will they take from this experience? How will it change them? Will civilian life seem shallow after such intensity, or will its comforts be appreciated with new awareness? "I'll never waste hot water again," says one soldier emphatically. "Used to let the tap run till it warmed up. Now I'll catch every drop." Others nod in understanding. It's not just water they're discussing, but a fundamental shift in perspective, a reassessment of what constitutes necessity versus luxury. "For me, it's bread," says another. "Fresh bread. Never really tasted it before, just ate it. Now I'll know what I'm eating." Again, the literal and metaphorical intertwine. It's about bread, yes, but also about presence, about full awareness of experience previously taken for granted. The conversation continues in this vein. Simple pleasures newly valued, ordinary experiences recognized as extraordinary, clean sheets, hot tea served in proper cups, the sound of a door closing in a quiet house, walking without constantly assessing exposure or cover. What strikes you is the absence of bitterness in these reflections. These men don't speak of compensation or reparation for what they've endured. Instead, they focus on what they've gained in awareness, in appreciation, in deeper understanding of what truly matters. As the fire burns down to embers and the night grows darker, you feel a strange sensation, a lightening, a shifting, as if the fabric of reality is thinning around you. The solid world of the trench begins to waver, like a reflection disturbed by ripples. You don't fight the feeling. Somehow you know it's time to return, that your presence here has reached its natural conclusion. You've witnessed a full cycle of seasons, experienced the full range of trench life. You've learned what you were sent to learn. The last thing you see as the trench begins to fade is the faces of Biscuit and Fletcher, illuminated by the dying fire. They're smiling, sharing some joke or memory, their expressions reflecting the profound bond formed through shared hardship. It's this image you carry with you as the world dissolves. You wake with a gasp, back in your own bed, your own time. For a moment, disorientation floods you. The silence seems wrong, the comfort suspicious, the clean air almost too thin to breathe. But gradually, reality reasserts itself. You're home. The displacement is over. Yet something has changed. As you move through your day, ordinary experiences take on extraordinary significance. The simple act of turning on a hot shower becomes miraculous. The abundance of fresh food seems almost excessive. The luxury of privacy, of space, of safety feels both wonderful and strangely unearned. More profoundly, you find yourself noticing things previously overlooked. The small kindnesses people extend to each other in daily life. The resilience shown in facing ordinary challenges. The community created through shared experience, even experiences far less extreme than trench warfare. You carry with you the lessons of the trench, not just historical knowledge, but deeper understanding of human capacity. You remember Biscuit's unfailing humor in the face of misery, Fletcher's generosity when he had almost nothing to give, the collective determination to maintain dignity in undignified circumstances. And you begin to recognize these same qualities in the people around you, expressing themselves in quieter ways, appropriate to peacetime. The parent who sacrifices sleep to care for a child, the neighbor who checks on the elderly during extreme weather, the friend who offers presence during grief. The heroism of ordinary life was always there, you realize. It simply took the extreme lens of the trench to bring it into focus. Now you cannot help but see it everywhere. This quiet courage, this determined kindness, this insistence on creating meaning, even in difficult circumstances. Perhaps this was the purpose of your strange journey. Not just to understand a historical period, but to recognize the continuous thread of human resilience running through all times. To see how the qualities that sustain us in extremity are the same ones that enrich our ordinary days. When you think back on your time in the trench, What stays with you most vividly isn't the mud or the cold or the danger. It's the community those men created despite everything. The civilization they maintained in the most uncivilized conditions. The humanity they preserved when everything conspired to strip it away. And in that remembrance is a profound challenge. If they could create meaning and connection in such circumstances, what might be possible in the relative comfort and safety of normal life? If kindness and dignity could survive there, how might they flourish here? This perhaps is the true legacy of those who endured the trenches of the Great War. Not just historical lessons about tactical failures or political consequences, but a demonstration of the human spirit's remarkable capacity for adaptation, connection, and meaning-making even in the darkest times. Their experience, so distant in time yet now so vivid to you, offers both perspective and inspiration. The mud and misery fade in memory, but the resilience remains, a testament to what humans can endure and the connections they can forge, even in the most challenging circumstances. And in your own life moving forward, you find yourself more attentive to small pleasures, more appreciative of basic comforts, more aware of the quiet heroism that surrounds you daily. The lesson of the trench wasn't about war at all, but about what makes us most deeply human, our capacity to care for each other, to find humor in darkness, to create beauty from scarcity. In this way, your journey through time becomes not just a window into history, but a mirror reflecting timeless truth, that in every era, under all conditions, the human spirit seeks connection, creates meaning, and persists in hope. A quiet, stubborn flame that even the darkest circumstances cannot extinguish. If this glimpse into the mud-soaked madness of history made you appreciate clean socks, do me a favor. Like this video. It helps more than whale oil helped those poor soldiers' feet. Subscribe for more forgotten truths and uncomfortable time travel experiments through human history. And hey, drop a comment. Would you have lasted longer than a rat in a trench? Or would you have begged to go over the top just to escape the boredom? I'll be reading them from the safety of my Wi-Fi.